Welcome back to Hopeful Moments 1. Today, we bring you 4 hilarious stories that will have you rolling on the floor laughing. Get ready for a wild ride through drama, comedy, and unexpected plot twists, from sneaky revenge plans and absurd marriage mishaps to the most unpredictable backfires. Join us for the fun, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. Are you ready? Let's dive right in. Story 1. You cut off my internet? Well, say goodbye to your gaming. I, 31F, used to live with my ex-boyfriend, 29M, for 4 years. At first, things were going pretty smoothly. We shared our lives, learned to compromise, and balanced our different habits and interests. I truly believed we had a solid relationship, one that could stand the test of time. But as the years went by, cracks started to show. Conversations became fewer, arguments became more frequent, and although nothing catastrophic happened, the emotional distance between us grew wider. Eventually, we decided to part ways amicably, or at least, that's what I thought. There were no dramatic fights, no betrayals, no ugly confrontations, just two people realizing they were no longer meant to be. I convinced myself that this was a mature, civilized breakup. But little did I know, I was being way too naive. After moving out, my ex took all his belongings, his clothes, computer, books, and a few personal decorations. I reorganized my space, thinking I was finally ready for a fresh start. However, he left behind something far more important than any physical possession, the internet account. You see, the internet contract was in his name, but I was the one paying for it every month. Since my job required a stable internet connection, I had always made sure the bills were paid on time. When we broke up, I asked if we could simply transfer the account to my name to avoid any future complications. I assumed it would be a quick and easy process, just a signature, and we'd be done. But oh no! I completely underestimated how petty he could be. Instead of handling things politely, he suddenly turned cold and uncooperative. His voice was sharper than usual, filled with irritation and reluctance. I tried to stay calm, assuming he was just feeling awkward about helping his ex after the breakup. After all, ending a relationship isn't easy for either party, and some negative emotions are understandable. But then, he did something completely unexpected, something small but filled with undeniable spite. He called the internet provider and canceled the entire contract. Immediately. I only found out about this the next morning while working from home. Everything was going smoothly until, boom, my internet stopped working. At first, I thought it was just a minor glitch, maybe a router issue. But after multiple resets and troubleshooting attempts, I started to feel uneasy. My worries turned into full-blown panic when I called the service provider. The customer representative's words hit me like a slap in the face. Your account was canceled this morning by the contract holder. For a moment, I just sat there, stunned. Surely, there had to be a mistake. But no. The representative confirmed that my ex had deliberately cut off my internet connection without a second thought. The shock quickly turned into rage. Not only had he sabotaged my workday, but now I had to go through the hassle of setting up a brand new internet account. And since I was no longer under the old promotional plan, I had to pay higher fees for the same service. Unbelievable. At that moment, I had 2 options. Call him and unleash my fury, demanding an explanation for his childish behavior. Take a deep breath and plot my revenge, calm, calculated, and brilliant. I chose the latter. Then, an idea struck me, a glorious, game-changing idea. My ex was a hardcore gamer. And his sacred temple? His Steam account. Now, here's the kicker, I was the one who had originally created that Steam account for him. I had paid for the games, topped up the wallet, and handled all the transactions. Which meant that, legally speaking, the account belonged to me. Out of curiosity, and maybe a little mischief, I logged in. What I saw made me cackle with evil delight. He was still actively using the account, happily gaming away as if nothing had happened. Oh, he could cut off my internet, but he couldn't cut ties with my Steam account? Interesting. Fury surged through me, but instead of acting recklessly, I played it smart. With just a few quick clicks, I changed the password, enabled two-factor authentication, and logged him out on all devices. Checkmate. I could almost picture him in the middle of an intense match, only to be abruptly kicked out, frantically clicking the login button, only to be met with a cold, merciless message, incorrect password. Then, when he tries to reset it, he'll come face to face with an even harsher reality: a verification code has been sent to the account owner's email. And who's the account owner now? Well, still me, of course. But unfortunately for him, I no longer feel like sharing. Less than an hour after I delivered my personal brand of justice, my phone started buzzing nonstop. A furious message popped up. You can probably guess who it was from. Him, HEY. What the hell did you do to my Steam account? Why can't I log in anymore? I stared at the screen, a satisfied smirk spreading across my face. This feeling, oh, it was glorious. Slowly, deliberately, I typed out my response, savoring every keystroke of this perfect moment of payback. Me, oh? You lost access? How strange. Maybe someone canceled it, winking face. I could practically picture his face, eyes wide in shock, jaw dropping, fingers scrambling to type in the password over and over in vain. Not even a minute later, another barrage of frantic messages flooded in. Him, give it back. I've spent hundreds of hours on that account. That's my account. Oh, really? I let out a small chuckle, my fingers gliding effortlessly over the screen. A voice in the back of my mind whispered, this is the moment to decide his fate. And guess what? I made my decision. No way in hell. Without a second thought, I tapped on his name, scrolled all the way down, and pressed block. Boom. The chat screen fell silent, like the world had just been cleansed of a toxic presence. I set my phone down and stretched with pure contentment. No more desperate messages, no more pointless rage. And just like that, I continued on with my peaceful life, no more sudden internet blackouts, no more annoying ex-boyfriend drama, and best of all, a fully stocked Steam account that I could enjoy whenever I pleased. Smirking face. My actions weren't some grand, ruthless revenge scheme. They weren't the kind of dramatic payback you see in movies. No, this was subtle, precise, and utterly perfect in its own way. I didn't need to yell, I didn't need to argue or drag things into an endless fight. I simply took back what was mine and let him experience the exact same blindsiding loss he had inflicted on me. If he wanted to play dirty, I had no problem responding in kind, but in my own, calm, devastating way. No screaming, no drama, just actions that spoke louder than words. And one thing was for sure, after this, he'd think twice before pulling a petty stunt like that on anyone else. I could just picture him now, sitting in front of his screen, clicking over and over, only to realize that he had lost. The helplessness, the frustration, the slow, creeping understanding that he had been completely outplayed, exactly how I had felt when he cut off my internet without warning. But here's the key difference: I didn't take anything from him unfairly. I only reclaimed what was rightfully mine. A small lesson, but one that would leave a big impact. And for me, victory wasn't just about reclaiming the account. It was about the absolute peace that followed: no more harassment, no more mistreatment. Just me, my life, and a game library full of titles waiting to be enjoyed on my own terms. Story 2, my husband nearly killed me. And he had the nerve to say I was overreacting. I, 29F, have been married to my husband, 29M, for 3 years. Throughout that time, I always believed we had a peaceful, stable marriage, not perfect, but nothing to complain about either. Life followed a familiar rhythm, waking up together, going to work, coming home for dinner, watching a movie, then going to bed. Day after day, everything was so calm that I sometimes wondered if I was just lucky to have such a smooth, drama-free married life. At least, that's what I thought. Until one day, I came to a horrifying realization, one that could have cost me my life. It was as if scattered puzzle pieces had suddenly come together, forming a picture so chillingly clear that it sent shivers down my spine. the man I had lived with for 3 years, the one I had trusted completely, might just be the greatest danger to me. And the scariest part? I had no idea when I started missing the signs. It all began not long ago, on what was supposed to be a peaceful evening as my husband and I were driving home after a lovely weekend getaway. We had just spent time relaxing, enjoying great food, laughing together. It was a perfect trip, until we got in the car, and my husband suddenly turned into an unofficial cast member of Fast and Furious. If you've never been in a car with a driver who thinks they're the long-lost descendant of Lewis Hamilton, let me tell you, it's terrifying. My husband has a driving style that would probably make any traffic safety expert faint on the spot. I had warned him, begged him, even threatened to refuse to ride with him unless he drove more carefully. And his response? Always the same, delivered with absolute, misplaced confidence. I got this. Don't worry. Ah, yes. Got this, in his world, apparently meant speeding down the highway as if he was setting a Grand Prix lap record, weaving in and out of lanes without signaling, and overtaking cars at a speed that made my heart drop into my stomach. I sat in the passenger seat, gripping the door handle like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to this world. In my head, I mentally scrolled through my unfinished life goals, hadn't traveled the world yet, hadn't learned how to make beef Wellington, and most importantly, hadn't written a will. Beside me, my husband remained calm, foot steady on the gas, completely unaware that I was in the middle of a silent fight for survival. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the moment I realized, maybe he wasn't intentionally trying to scare me, maybe he genuinely believed he was a professional race car driver. I tried to stay calm, but every time our car barely scraped past another vehicle, my heart felt like it was about to leap out of my chest. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned to him, my voice urgent but firm. Please slow down. You're driving way too dangerously. I hoped, prayed, that this time, he would hear the seriousness in my tone. That he would understand this wasn't just me nagging or making an offhand complaint, this was life or death. But no! My husband simply smirked, a faint smile playing on his lips as if I had just said something utterly ridiculous. He didn't even look at me, his hands still steady on the wheel, foot pressing the gas at the same reckless speed. His voice was so calm it infuriated me. I got this. Don't worry. That sentence. That damn sentence. It sent a chill through me, more than any of his sudden accelerations ever could. I opened my mouth to say something more, but then, in the blink of an eye, the car in front of us suddenly slammed on its brakes. I saw the bright red brake lights flashing right ahead, watched in horror as the distance between us and that car shrank at an alarming speed. My hands clenched around my seatbelt, my heart pounding wildly, every nerve in my body on high alert. And in that moment, I understood. No matter how much he thought he was in control, my fate was completely out of my hands. We were approaching an extremely sharp turn, the kind of turn any sane person with basic survival instincts would slow down for. But my husband? No. He stepped on the gas even harder, as if he was conducting a real-life experiment on Newton's laws of motion. Panic flooded my system, my heart beat like a war drum. Every survival instinct I had kicked in at full force. I screamed the only thing any rational person would say in this situation. Stop. But guess what? Too late. The tires screeched like a fish flailing on dry land, completely losing traction, sending us hurtling straight toward the guardrail. In that split second, time seemed to slow. One part of me screamed in terror, while another part sarcastically berated myself. I could have chosen a peaceful life, but no, I had to marry this wannabe F1 driver. Then, bam! The airbags deployed just in time, preventing us from becoming the headline of tomorrow's traffic news. The car stopped. The guardrail was intact. And I was still breathing, a miracle. I sat there, my hands trembling, my mind struggling to process the fact that I had just almost died. And then, filled with fear and shock, I turned to my husband, expecting, hoping, for some genuine remorse, a heartfelt apology, or at the very least, a simple acknowledgement like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I nearly killed you." But no. He laughed. Then, with an utterly casual expression, as if we had merely slipped on a banana peel, he said the words that nearly made me throw him out of the car. "You're overreacting. What's the big deal?" I froze. This man, had just nearly sent me to the afterlife, and this was his reaction? I swear, if it weren't illegal, I would have tossed him out of the car right then and there. I snapped. Every ounce of frustration, fear, and anger that had been bottled up inside me exploded like a bomb. I yelled, unable to hold back my fury and exhaustion. My voice shook, not just from fear but from sheer exhaustion at his terrifying recklessness. I told him, word for word, my voice cutting through the suffocating tension inside the car. "Do you even realize what you just did? I am done with your recklessness. I cannot keep risking my life because you refuse to take safety seriously." I hoped that, finally, he would get it. That he would wake up, recognize the severity of what had just happened. I didn't need him to cry or beg for forgiveness, I just needed a hint of awareness, a shred of responsibility, some acknowledgement that my safety mattered. But instead of an apology, instead of even the slightest sign of guilt or concern, he shrugged. A goddamn shrug. As if I had just complained about the weather, not about nearly dying. And then, in a tone so dismissive I could barely believe my ears, he said, "Come on, you're overreacting. We're fine." Fine? I could hardly process his words. While I was still shaking, my heart racing from fear, he acted like nothing had happened. Like that near-death experience was just a minor inconvenience. I didn't hesitate for a second. I opened the car door and stepped out. I didn't care where I was. I didn't care that it was cold, or that the road was deserted, I just knew I could not sit beside this man for one more second. I trembled, unsure if it was from the cold or the anger still boiling inside me. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echoing in my chest. I felt like I was about to burst into tears, not just from fear, but from a deeper pain, the realization that I had fallen in love with someone who didn't value my safety. And in that moment, every doubt I had ever pushed aside became crystal clear. I couldn't continue living with someone like this. Someone who didn't care about my well-being. Someone who treated life like a game. Someone I had trusted, when in reality, staying with him might mean that one day, I wouldn't get the chance to walk away from that car at all. And so, I made my decision, this was the end. Not just for this drive, but for my marriage. After that incident, I could never look at him the same way again. Before, whenever I looked at my husband, I saw a life partner, someone I had once trusted and loved. But now, all I saw was disappointment. I no longer felt safe around him. Every time he touched me, I was reminded of that horrifying moment, the moment I truly believed I wouldn't live to tell the story. I started pulling away, both physically and emotionally. At first, he didn't notice. But as I grew colder, he finally began to wonder. "What's wrong with you? Are you seriously acting like this over something so small?" Something small? I could barely believe what I was hearing. When I told my friends about what had happened, they were shocked. At one point, I even wondered if I was overreacting, if I was making too big a deal out of it. But their reactions told me otherwise. "Are you kidding? Someone who nearly caused a serious accident and didn't feel even a little guilty? Are you sure you can trust him in the future?" Their words rang in my head like a wake-up call. Could I trust him in the future? This wasn't just about reckless driving or ignoring safety. It was something far bigger. He didn't care about my feelings. He never apologized. He wasn't worried about me. He even mocked my fear. So, could I really trust him? I started thinking about divorce. The thought lingered in my mind, though I wasn't ready to say it out loud. But one thing I knew for sure. I would never get into a car with him behind the wheel again. Because if I kept trusting him with my life, there might not be a next time to learn from. Story 3. Am I the bad guy for not sacrificing myself so my friend can move in with her crush? I, 26F, have been living with my best friend, Emily, 27F, in a pretty decent apartment. We split the rent equally, and everything has been going smoothly. But then, drama exploded when Emily asked me to move out, just so she could live with her crush. I, 26F, have been sharing an apartment with my best friend, Emily, 27F. We split the rent fairly, cook together, and sometimes stay up late watching movies and chatting, just like real best friends. Everything was going great, until the drama hit. One evening, like any other, I was lounging on the sofa, enjoying some downtime after a long day. Emily walked into the living room, but instead of greeting me as usual, she stood there with a strange smile, half mysterious, half excited. Immediately, I felt that something was off. "Hey, can you move out?" I shot up from the couch. "What?" I thought I must have misheard her. Maybe I was too tired, or the background noise from my movie had mixed with her words. But then I saw the eager look in her eyes, and I realized she was completely serious. "I mean," she continued, her tone ridiculously casual, "could you find another place to live? I want to invite Ava to move in." Ava. Ava was Emily's crush, a girl she had been infatuated with for months but had never been in an actual relationship with. My eyes widened. "Wait. You're asking me to move out of my own home, just because of someone you have a crush on?" Emily nodded, as if this was the most reasonable request in the world. She then launched into what sounded like a well-rehearsed speech. "Ava and I really vibe together. You don't understand, this is such a great opportunity for us to get closer, to try living together and see how it goes. And I mean, you could find another place, right? There are so many apartments in this city. Oh, and she even enthusiastically offered to help me find a new place, like this was some mutually beneficial arrangement rather than me being kicked out of my own home." I genuinely didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I stared at Emily, searching for even a hint of guilt, some hesitation in her expression. But there was none. She really thought this was a perfect idea. And that was the moment I realized something important: no matter how close you are as friends, there are some boundaries that should never be crossed. I refused immediately, without hesitation. "Why should I leave?" I asked, my tone completely serious. I was paying my share of the rent every month, my name was on the lease, and most importantly, I had no obligation to give up my home, especially not for a crush. I looked Emily straight in the eyes and didn't back down. "I get that you like Ava, but this is my home too. I'm not just going to move out so you can live with your crush." Emily was completely taken aback. Clearly, she had expected a different response, maybe an agreement or at least some hesitation that she could use to convince me further. But no, I shut it down outright. And that's when the battle began. Emily rolled her eyes, her voice rising as she started arguing. "You're so selfish," she nearly shouted. "Can't you make a small sacrifice for our friendship? Oh, so now getting kicked out of my own home while smiling and accepting it was considered friendship?" But she wasn't done yet. Emily continued, her voice dripping with disappointment, as if I had somehow betrayed her in the worst way possible. "I've helped you so many times in the past. Can't you just help me this once?" Ah, the classic guilt trip, bringing up past favors to emotionally manipulate me. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Yes, friends help each other out. I appreciated everything Emily had done for me in the past. But helping a friend didn't mean I had to sacrifice my own stability for the sake of a potential romance she wasn't even sure about. I looked at Emily, my voice steady but firm. "Friends help each other in times of need, but this isn't one of those times. This isn't helping, this is you asking for an unreasonable sacrifice." Emily was speechless for a few seconds, but I knew this battle wasn't over yet. When she failed to convince me directly, she switched tactics, rallying support from our mutual friends. And just as I expected, the rumors spread quickly. Emily started telling everyone that I was a terrible, selfish, and heartless friend, that I was cruel for refusing to do this one small thing to help her get closer to Ava. Before long, my phone was flooded with messages. Some were gentle, trying to persuade me. They told me to be more understanding, that love is important, and that I should give Emily a chance to pursue her happiness. Others were more direct, calling me inflexible, inconsiderate, and even suggesting that I was jealous of Emily, which is why I didn't want her to be happy. I couldn't believe it. Wait a second, who was the one being kicked out here? Who was the one being forced to give up their stability for a relationship that wasn't even guaranteed?